Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a video where I chat about my top 10 favorite authors, and I'll be giving a recommendation with them as well. I just wanted to do like a video where I kind of chatted and gushed about some of my favorite authors because I love them, and I just wanted to compile a list of my favorites. So let's get right into this video. Okay, so I feel like this is in no particular order, but I'm going to first talk about Kennedy Ryan. I absolutely love her romances. I feel like she is just one of the greatest authors ever because she just intertwines really like heavy topics and emotional topics with romance in such a beautiful way. And she describes romance as a landscape to talk about difficult things. And I just love that she said that because it is so true, especially for her romances. So one of my favorites by her, I think my top favorite by her, is Grip, which is a second chance romance with lots of mutual pining. It is amazing. Our hero and heroine were going to be something, but then the heroine was betrayed by the hero, but it was kind of a miscommunication type thing. So now it is years later and she is coming back to Los Angeles where he lives and her brother lives to become their like publicist type thing. And she just still has feelings for him but doesn't want to get hurt again. And it's kind of like a second chance a little bit, super emotional and angsty because it does deal with a lot of heavy topics. Like they are an interracial couple, and it does talk about, you know, racial profiling, police brutality, and I just love this romance and how they found their way back to each other. But it definitely was hard, it was not easy, and I just love seeing both of their characters grow so much throughout this series. This is just one of my favorite romances ever. The audiobook is absolutely amazing. You need to read this if you haven't, but I just have loved so many of her books. Like The Kingmaker's Duet is another one of my favorites. That one's really good. I just love, she really loves to throw in like tons of mutual pining in her romance, like kind of like second chance romances and where their love spans the years, which I really love. And just more people need to read her because she is just a queen and I love her so much. And of course I had to put Gianna Darling on this list. I've been reading Gianna since the beginning of my romance journey. She is just one of my favorite authors ever. I think her writing is absolutely gorgeous because she is very descriptive and kind of like lyrical in a sense where it feels like you're just thrown into the story and the atmosphere because she writes that way. And I just love how she writes. It is very, you know, descriptive, and some people don't love that about her, but I personally love it. I think it's absolutely stunning. Like the way she describes something, she could describe like, you know, a piece of toast and I would find it beautiful because she is just that talented of a writer. And so I have to talk about Inked in Lies, which is one of my favorites from her. This is a friends to lovers age gap romance set in the Fallen Men series. It is incredible. I love this romance so much because there's just so much character growth for both of the characters. They grew up together and she's always had feelings for him and he's always looked out for her, but they've never crossed that line until now. And her heroes are always just so protective and supportive of their women, and I love that about her romances. She just writes the best characters ever, seriously. She is just one of my favorite authors of all time. I just love her romances, and she just, I could talk about her forever and ever because I love her that much. And I have Penelope Douglas. I have been reading her again since the start of my romance journey. I first started off with Bully from her, and I just fell in love with her writing. I feel like she writes romances in the way that they're like, she does things in a purposeful way. Like she'll tell you something and then it'll come up later in the book and you're like, oh, that's the connection with that. And I love that about her romances. And one of my favorites from her is Birthday Girl. It was one of the first ex-boyfriend dad romances that I ever read, and I just absolutely fell in love with this one. She is just like top tier for me. I just love her book so much. I cannot wait for every release that she releases. I'm just obsessed with her. I don't know, and I feel like I remember her characters for forever. Like I still think about their romances, and it's hard for an author to do that, and she can do that for me. So I just love her so much. Then I have Catherine Cowles, of course. I started reading Catherine, I think like a year and a half ago, and I've just been in love with her writing ever since. I've never really been into small town romances, and so I started reading her romances, and I am just obsessed with them now, and she is the reason for that, I feel like. And I just love how she writes like found family in such a beautiful way, and I just think her romances are top tier small town, and they are just so good. I really love her Tattered and Torn series and her Lost and Found series, and they always have some suspense in them, but I love how protective the heroes are of their heroines, and I feel like she does tropes so well, like the, you know, touch her and you die trope, like in Echoes of You, and I don't know, I just really feel like her writing is so authentic and just realistic, and she always throws in a fun character in between. Like in her newest release, there's just a hilarious grandmother character named Lolly, and she is just hilarious, and I just love how like unique she throws in these like fun little things to add to the story. So I love her so much, and I will probably buy every special edition that is released of her romances because I'm obsessed with them. Then I have Elsie Silver. I love her romances so much. I've actually read a lot of them on audio, but I don't know, I just love her heroes. Like, some of her heroes are my favorites. I just love like how they add to the story and how like her romances, I just feel like, are so good. Every time I read one of her books, I'm just like, this is the new one I'm obsessed with. And I just also love her found family vibes in her romances, and how she throws in, you know, her romance is a little bit more cowboy, which is fun, and I never used to think that that was hot, but she made that hot for me, and I just love that about her romances. So many are my favorites. I recently read Wild Love and really love that one, and I feel like she also has really good banter in her romances as well, and I loved Wild Love. It is a childhood friends to lovers romance where there's tons of mutual pining, and it's also brother's best friend. And I just love like the settings of her romances. They are just so good. And if you haven't read her yet, you need to. Of course, I had to put Sarah J Maas on this list. The one I'm going to talk about is Heir of Fire because I love that one and I don't talk about it as much. It is from the Throne of Glass series. I feel like that book is when things finally start picking up and you hear all of the hype about the series. And you're like, the first two books are like, well, I don't really understand it. Like, this isn't that good. And then you get to Heir of Fire and you're like, holy crap, this is where things really jump off. And I just love her fantasy romances. I love how she sets up her worlds. They make sense to me, and I just love all of the secrets and lore she weaves throughout her romances. It's just so good, and how like slow burn they are, but then once they finally get together, it's like all consuming, and I feel like her characters are really complex, and I just love her fantasy, like the way she writes fantasy, because it is just so exciting and action-packed and makes sense. And sometimes fantasy can be really confusing for me, and I feel like she just does it in a way that makes sense, and I enjoy it, and I just get obsessed with her characters and are like ride or die for them. So I love her so much, and I cannot wait for new releases from her. And I have Samantha Young. I've recently become obsessed with her Highland series, which all revolves around in like Scotland. I've recently read Skies Over Caledonia by her, and it was impeccable. It was so freaking good. It is a kind of like second chance a little bit because they were almost a thing, but then they weren't. And so the heroine, she's going to visit her sister in Scotland. She realizes that if she leaves Scotland, she will not be able to get back into the country. And so she makes a proposition with the hero, who is cousins with one of the past heroines in the previous book, to have a marriage of convenience. And it is really good. It's like forced proximity, and he owns a farm, and so he agrees because he needs the money for the farm. And there are so many like my wife moments in this one, and there's kind of like an F it moment where it's like, you know, they go in and it's all consuming, and I love that. And I've just been really enjoying this series. I love Scotland, and I just really like her characters and her storylines. They are just so good. I have Helena Hunting, specifically the Hearts Lies series. I always forget the name of that series, but it is an angsty romance series set like it's new adult, and it all revolves around like hockey as well. And I've just been loving this series. I've been listening to it on audio. Each of them are, well, one of them is like a forbidden like student teacher romance. The first one is like friends to lovers to enemies, and that one's really good. I've just been really enjoying this series, and I love how she does angst in her romances, and I've just been loving this series, and she has made me fall in love with her writing. So I just cannot wait for the next release in this series. Then I have Mariana Zapata. I absolutely adore her romances. I need to read more of them. I have not read her newer releases because I just feel intimidated by them. But like Colty, I read at the beginning of my romance journey. So freaking good. She has so many good romances, like from Luke Off with Love, and I just love how she does the slow burn angst in her romances, because it's like you're waiting and waiting. You feel like, you know, you are so thirsty for water, and then she gives it to you like right at the end, and it's like, holy crap, like you're just like so giddy, like kicking your feet in the air, like, oh my gosh, they're finally, you know, going for it. And I just love her characters. She writes comedy, like not in like a rom-com-y way, but just like, you know, like a laugh out loud way. You're like, oh, like that's really funny. So I just really love her romances. I need to read more of them. She's just such a great writer, and I just love her sports romances specifically as well. The last author I'm going to talk about is Sierra Simone. I have read her Priest series and have just absolutely adored it. Saint and Sinner are so good. They are super emotional, and they deal with a lot of like, you know, inner turmoil and dealing with, you know, religious trauma. And I just love the way it was handled in this book, these two books. It was just so good. And Sinner is a age gap, forbidden best friend's sister romance. And then Saint is a very angsty second chance romance, and they deal a lot with like religion because of something that happened in their family to their sister. And I just love these romances. There's so much character growth. They are both super angsty, and I just love the way she writes them. And it is just so good because it makes me really think about like, you know, my experiences, and I'm like, oh, like I connect with that. And I don't know, I feel like she writes her heroes so well, and her romances, I always just really, really love them. All right, well, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing me chat about my top 10 favorite authors. There are so many more authors that I love, but I just wanted to talk about these for right now. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.
I was never the one to write up a song for just anyone. I was always the one to find myself lost in long conversations, oh, 'cause I've always been told that things will unfold if you